subtracting our rational expressions. We're going to talk about multiplying our radical expressions.
Rational.
And we're going to talk about dividing our rational expressions.
And as a reminder, rational
expressions?
Yeah, just a rational function was...
expressions that had a function over a function where there was at least an x on the bottom.
Exactly. Just a little reminder there.
Yep. So our notes today are just some examples of each of those things. So first we have an example of adding. So if we're trying to add two functions that are written as a fraction, we would have something like x minus 3 over x plus 1, that's a 1, sorry about that, x minus 2, plus 2x plus 1 over x plus 2 times x plus 2. And so what we have to do here today is get a common denominator. So that was why up here we have the keyword, common denominator. This is going to be the most important thing. In order to add, subtract, we have to have a common denominator. So in order to get a common denominator, again, we look at the bottom, just like we did last week. Only last week we only had one thing on the bottom of each side. This week we're going to kind of bump that up a little bit. So if we look at that, this should be x minus 2. I know I said x minus 2 and just didn't write it that way. If we look at that, then the only thing I have common is that x minus 2 that I just fixed there. So what I have on the bottom of both sides is an x minus 2. That part's the same. What I don't have on the bottom of both sides, this side is missing the x plus 1, and this side is missing my x plus 2. So what I need to do is get a common denominator. And in order to get a common denominator, remember from last week, what I'm really doing is multiplying the top and the bottom of this part by what I'm missing, and I'm multiplying the top and the bottom of this side by what I was missing over here. So that's going to mean I have x minus 3, and I'm going to times that by what it's missing, x plus 2. And I'm only going to worry about the top for right now, if that's okay with everyone.
Did everybody see where she got the x plus 2? That it came from the second fraction on the bottom, because the first fraction did not have an x plus 2 right there. So she has to multiply that whole left fraction by x plus 2, top and bottom.
So that I have a common denominator. And I'm only going to do the top first. So let's just looking at the top part first. And then on the other side, so I'm going to leave myself some room there, I'm going to have 2x plus 1 that I had from the top right here. Then I look over at the bottom of the other side and say, okay, well, what is this fraction missing? Well, this fraction is missing the x plus 1. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to mark my x plus 1.
Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, I'm only doing the top. The bottom will come along in just a minute because the bottom is the easy part. The top is the only part that requires some work. Because last week, and we practiced this too last week just to remind us, if I multiply this one by this one, what do I have to do?
Foil.
If I want to avoid a train wreck,
Magic square.
I can either use my magic square or I can FOIL. So I have two problems that I either have to magic square or FOIL. So we are going to start with this. And if I put my x and my 2 here, and my x and my negative 3 there, okay, then I'd have x times x, so that's x squared. X times 2, that's 2x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And so I'm going to rewrite this part all out as x squared, negative 3x, and positive 2x is negative x. and negative 6. Is everybody okay with that part so far?
And that is the top of the left fraction.
That's going to be my new top here. But it doesn't really matter because I'm going to put it all
Okay.
together, that left and right part.
Okay.
And I'm going to add that to, I just brought down my sign here, what I get when I do this side. And again, you know I have to use a magic square. You could foil if you're a foiler.
X plus 2 on top.
So I have x plus 1 on the
X
top
minus
and
two on
x
the-
plus, or 2x plus 1, excuse me, and x plus 1 going down the side. And I'm going to go ahead and foil that again. So I have 2 times x is 2x squared. 2x times 1 is just 2x. 1 times 1 is 1. Nope, that goes here, sorry. And 1 times x is just 1x. And again, I'm going to bring my plus sign just down further. And I'm going to say, okay, well that's 2x squared plus 2x and 1x, 3x plus 1. So all I've done so far is I looked at my fractions at the top, I identified the parts that were the same, and again I apologize that that was the wrong sign to start with. And then I looked for what was missing. So this side did not have an x plus 2. So I have to multiply the top and the bottom by x plus 2. This side did not have an x plus 1. So I have to multiply that side by x plus 1. In order to multiply those, I either had to use my square or I had to foil. Okay? So if we wanted to write ourselves some steps, up here, you might have to factor. Our problem was already factored for us. So, you know, we didn't have to worry about that so much. And then we had to look for a common denominator. And then finally, so far, we've had to multiply by the missing parts. So whatever was missing, that's what we multiplied by on each side. And by multiply, we mean foil or box, depending on which way you like to do it the best. Alright? Now, step 4, we can combine our like terms. I can't because I can't spell it, but combine our like terms. So if I look at this one, this side and this side, I would have x squared plus 2x squared. So how many x squareds do I have all together?
3.
I have 3x squareds. And then I have minus an x and plus 3 x's. So how many x's does that leave me? That leaves me 2 x's. And then I have a negative 6 and a positive 1. So if I take negative 6 and positive 1, that leaves me negative 5. That's the top of my whole problem. Okay? So this is our new top for now. And this is the longest problem you have to do. Multiplying and dividing is faster in this case. And on the bottom, we're really just going to write our new common denominator. So we're going to write the common denominator on the bottom.
So steps 1 through 4 on the right-hand side were really for to get your new numerator.
These are all my steps to get the new top. Numerator, if you like the vocabulary. Lovely. Okay? To get the bottom, I'm just writing out what I had for my denominator now. So we start with the thing we have in common. I always start with the thing that's on both sides. So I'm going to write the x minus 2. Okay? Then I'm going to write the 2 parts that we're missing. So this side had an x plus 1. The other side was missing it, but I multiplied by it, so now I can put it on the bottom, where you can see these terms are already multiplied, and I'm just not actually going to do it out. It saves us some time. And this side had an x plus 2. So to get the new common denominator, I just look at the bottom, and I write out all of the individual pairs one time.
I was going to say, make sure you say 1 time, because you're not going to write that x minus 2 twice, because when you add a fraction, remember...
We leave our bottoms the same.
Right.
So we just look at the bottom, and we find the parts, and we write each part 1 time. We're not done, but we're close. Okay? So, we did all of these steps to get the top, but the bottom was really easy. We just rewrite it. And now the last thing we have to do, so the last step, and these are the long ones, remember I told you the multiplying will be much easier, so will dividing. The last thing I have to do is check again to see, can I factor the top of that fraction? Because sometimes I'll be able to factor the top and then do my cross out thing that I like so much. So I need to look back at the top of that. Those are the ones that are hard for you to factor because they have a coefficient in the front. So if you cannot remember how to factor with a coefficient in the front, last week Thursday on the website we put a specific link, not that I can speak clearly, a specific link for factoring when you have a coefficient in the front. Again, you don't have to factor. You could use your table, you could use your graph, you could use the quadratic formula. But if you wanted to factor, there's a link there. So to factor the top, and this part's obviously not my favorite, the crossing out part is, the bottom's going to stay exactly the same. And now what I need to do to factor the top is look at this. And if you will, I'm just going to bring it down here. 3x squared plus 2x minus 5. I set up my sets of parentheses. I am really happy that the only thing that I know that gives me 5 at the end is 5 and 1, because that will make my life easier. I also know that in order for this to be a positive number and that one to be negative, my 5 is going to have to be positive because my bigger number has to be positive. Otherwise, I'd have a negative number in the middle. And this guy is going to have to be negative. And the other thing that I'm happy about right now is that I only know that I can multiply 3 times 1, split my x's, to get 3. So now I just have to check myself and make sure I put them in the right spot. I'd have 3 times x, which gives me 3x squared. 3 times negative 1 gives me negative 3x. 5 times positive 1 gives me positive 5x. And 5 times negative 1 gives me negative 5. And if I combine my middle terms, I get 3x squared plus 2x minus 5. So I double check, did that match? Yep, it does. And so I can write those two factors in. If you do it on your calculator or using quadratic formula, this will end up being some sort of a nice little fraction instead of this term, but it's exactly the same. So I factor the top, and then I look to see if anything cancels out. So do I have any terms on the top that match my terms on the bottom? I don't think so. So unfortunately, this whole thing is my answer. That's the best I can do.
And it was a 13-minute problem.
So we should add a new tape for the other one.